morning or afternoon, wherever you are, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties between linking our streaming platform and LinkedIn Live. So if you are joining us from LinkedIn Live, welcome to Riverside. If you got the Riverside link directly, then welcome as well. My name is Randi Stebbins, and this is the latest live stream of our kind of podcast live streamy chain reactions, the spark behind smarter supply chain decisions. And I'm the head of content at AGR, and I'll be hosting today's chat. With me today are two CEOs, Tim Payne, who is the CEO of Clarus WMS, which is Warehouse Management System. I'm assuming our audience knows, but I always like to explain acronyms because they can get confusing, which he founded in 2016. And we were just chatting that we're coming up on 10 years for you. So that's very exciting. But Tim has been working in the WMS tech field longer than 2016. So he brings his experience both with Clarus and before Clarus to this chat today. And his real passion with Clarus is to simplify and automate the warehouse management systems. So welcome, Tim. Thanks. And also with me today is Haukur Hannesen, who is the CEO of AGR. And when I asked Haukur for a bio, he's like, my bio is AGR, which I razzed him for, but he's right. He's right. Like, it is true. You've been with AGR since almost 25 years now, which seems impossible, but really since AGR started. So you are not wrong that your bio is AGR, but I think that you will agree that, AGR is also looking to bring simplicity, automation, transparency to the inventory or stock management side of things. And so that is what AGR offers, is a supply chain or stock or inventory. It's really interesting being American myself, and Tim, you're from the UK. Do we use stock? Do we use inventory? We get in all these discussions. System where people can then, take charge and control of their inventory as well. So welcome, Haukur. Anything you want to add to your bios? We good? We agree with everything I said?
I think 20 years in WMS, so I'm, it's pretty much all I've done.
Yeah.
Same here. A simple bio. The bio is just HR, but it feels like I've changed my role every 2 years for those 24 years I've been here. So I've been in various roles within HR, and so but always focusing on replenishment and demand planning solutions for the supply chain. So simple bio.
Fabulous. Though officially on LinkedIn, I think you've only had 3 roles. But interestingly, Tim and I were chatting about it coming up on 10 years. He said that, despite that maybe they're moving out of the sort of startup phase, they still want to keep that startup mentality. And I know, Haukur, that's something you've talked about quite a lot in AGR as well, that we want to keep that sort of agile, flexible, always willing to try something new mentality. So I think it's interesting and to hear where you two agree on things. And it will also be interesting to hear where you maybe don't agree. But we're not just here to talk about Clarus and AGR. We're here to talk about supply chain 2025 and 2026. Both actually 3 parts, from your perspectives, Tim and Haukur, and also from the perspectives of our AGR users who filled out our customer 2025-2026 survey. So thank you to everybody who filled that out. It's really helpful to us to hear your voice directly. Before we bring that in, though, let's just open with a super, super broad question. And Tim, since you're the guest at AGR, I'll start with you. In your opinion, what was the biggest supply chain challenge, issue, surprise, maybe win? I don't want to start negative. I feel like we always frame these conversations negative. So maybe it was a win, in your opinion, of this past year of 2025.
Sure. I think from a global perspective, we obviously had a new administration in the US, and Donald Trump came in, and tariffs was kind of the first big surprise we got. Well, it wasn't a surprise as such. He talked about it during his campaign, but I think everyone was surprised how quickly that came in and how aggressive it was, especially at the start. There was some crazy numbers being bandied around, which had businesses looking at their global supply chain going, hang on a minute, we need to maybe rethink the way where we're storing goods, where we're manufacturing things, because the world is changing very quickly from that side of things. Obviously, as the year went on, trade deals got made and those numbers became a little bit more easy to understand. But I think it was the volatility and the unknown was probably the most scary part when you look at global supply chain. What's 2026 going to look like? At the beginning of 2025, that was really unknown. It was really hard to imagine. Now, it has settled down a little bit, but we know business doesn't like uncertainty. And I feel like there was a lot of uncertainty for probably a large part of the first half of this year. The positive element of this, and we'll talk about this a lot, is just AI in general. I think it turned a corner this year where it got to a point where it can be reliable enough now for businesses to start using that in a more integrated way. So not just write me a nice email, it can actually form part of your workflow. And I think that's the exciting part that's come out of 2025. That would be my two positives and negatives of how the year's gone, I suppose.
Great. And we will talk about AI later, though I promise everybody it's not the only thing we're going to talk about, because I think we all have a little bit of AI fatigue, but it is huge, and so we can't ignore it. Haukur, what about you?
I think in 2025, and supply chain teams that we are working with are starting to realize just disruption and unexpected things happening is the new norm. And they are starting to prepare their supply chains to meet things that come that they don't know in the beginning of the year. They came out of the COVID area where there were a lot of disruption. And this year, some of them were prepared. And I see how our customers are working. They are starting to expect the unknown, and they do that with various actions. That's the positive thing, that there are many negative things happening. Some of that you mentioned, the trade war and things like that. But I see some of the supply chains starting to prepare for that, where they go more into nearshoring, make sure that they have both dual source, what does happen if this supplier is not working for me? Where can I take it from? Take it from somebody that is local, but then it's costly to have that. So you also need to make sure to prioritize and to do this only on the items that are very critical to you. And then also to make sure if you go nearshoring and you work with somebody that is in your same country or a near country, to make sure that you're not relying on China or US or wherever, that the same local supplier is not relying on that as well, because you're not minimizing the risk to go locally if the same local supplier is relying on China or US or whatever it is. But I think in general, it is just preparing their supply chains for the unknowns that we are constantly dealing with and has been constantly dealing with in last years.
Yeah, I think, it's not just business that doesn't like change. Business is just people, and people have a hard time with change and have a hard time with the unknown and not being able to predict the future. But we say disruption is the new normal, but at the same time, I kind of have a feeling like there's always been something up. Right? Maybe we've gotten more able and agile at responding quicker, like both of you mentioned, but there's always something up in the world, especially with a global supply chain. So I want to go to a year ago where we sent our survey out to our users and asked them the future of 2025. And they came up with their top 3 issues that they were worried about in 2025. And disruptions was number 1. So you two definitely agree with that. Hit the nail on the head. It played out. People were really aware of maybe not exactly what was coming their way, but they were aware that something was coming their way, which is great. Their number 2 was rising costs. What do you think about that? Did that play? That's huge and broad, but in your own fields, did that play out? Did that not so much play out? Where are we with that one?
Definitely played out with the tariff war. That was and that came so quickly. So one is about rising cost that comes, where it's just going from month to month, but there is just one big decision, and I think it was the speed of it that people were not expecting in the beginning of the year. What they were worried about, it came from a different direction than they were expecting. That is how I read it, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is on the back of what we've just obviously had inflation, although still not fully solved in the UK. Tariffs on top of that felt again like, when does this end? sort of piece. And then again, in the UK, we had some tax rises as well that affected businesses, minimum wage going up as well, which again affected warehouses. So for our industry, we definitely saw a bit of a squeeze on logistics businesses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting you mentioned inflation, Tim, because I don't think anybody really predicted the post-COVID, and I know that seems like a long time ago, and we don't talk about that anymore, but it was a really post-COVID inflation, that I know in Iceland hit quite hard. Other countries with larger markets maybe were able to adjust more easily. So I do think that really was something that people had not bargained with, especially since inflation of that type had not happened for a long, long time. Maybe even in the lifetime of some of the people who are working in the supply chain. Their number 3 top concern was sustainability. Again, a super broad category, sustainable supply chain, sustainable environmentally, sustainable economically, workforce. How do you or did you see that play out in your own experiences with working with people in the supply chain this year? Tim, you want to take that one?
I think, if I'm honest, it felt like it took a step backwards this last year rather than forwards. I think there's a lot of policies being kind of reversed, a lot of companies kind of reversing. You look at the car manufacturers, they're kind of moving backwards away from EV to more petrol and diesel cars. So it does feel like it took a step backwards, and that may be again because of rising costs. It becomes almost a luxury. It's, you're almost in business to survive rather than in business to survive plus, hopefully give something back. And I think that's probably what's happened across the markets.
And what about you, Haukur?
I agree on that. It took us, sadly, so in my opinion, that it took a step backward. But on the other hand, this is number 3 there on the list. I assume this has gone down the list now, and that is probably it is going back with that part. But sustainable supply chain can mean other things as well. So one is the environmental part, but also just say sustainable supply chain, that you can continue to work with similar supply chain in the future. It's how you read into that word, which is.
Yeah, I know it means so much. Yep. And it means so many different things across different fields. And then a year ago, when we asked them, as far as supply chain tech or supply chain data, what was the number one thing they saw trending? And 73% of them, which is a quite high number as far as the percentage goes, said that there would be an increased demand for visibility and transparency in the supply chain. And I find this really interesting because I know this is something that AGR and Clarus really think about and work on. So how does that hit with you? Was that 2025? Were there too many fires to put out because of all the issues we talked about? How do you feel about that prediction?
Yeah, one of it is this part, but what surprised me now when we're looking into 26, which is heavily linked to that, and how people were seeing it at the end of 24, starting 25. Most people said there, are you using AI? No, I'm not. But what are you going to do in 25? I'm going to start using AI. And now we get the same answers. That is both a surprise. Now you're getting the same answer. Are you using it in 25? No. But are we going to use it in 26? Yes, we are. I think we are closer to it now. And that I'm referring to what Tim was saying here earlier. I think now we have the tech stack to use AI effectively. But this is something that I think if I go to your question, I think both of those companies are working in this direction to give you better visibility, to give the user better tools to take decisions, both based on decisions that the system takes, but also just to give them the overview and the visibility. And that is, I think companies are looking for solutions like that Tim and his company is offering, and AGR.
Yeah. Let me just bounce in for a second. In 2024, actually, when we asked about AI, or a couple of respondents actually said, I don't know, if AGR is using it, then I'm using it. So I think that hits what you were talking about, that and clarity, maybe the confusion about what AI is and what it can accomplish and things like that, which Tim, you also mentioned before. But please go ahead, Tim.
No, I think when it comes to looking at the supply chain in general, it's still amazing how many companies are still using legacy platforms. And I think that's where your data isn't flowing as nicely through the supply chain. We work with customers who work with some of the largest companies in the world. And, we're still having issues getting the right data from them so that we can service them in a way that is most advantageous. I think what's going to start to happen, and again, we'll touch on this on the next year part, is I think things like AI are going to really put a lot more pressure on a reason to move off your legacy platform. Mm-hmm. Because you were being left behind before when you had a company on a cloud system compared to an on-premise legacy platform. But now in the world of AI, I think the gulf is going to get even more large. And I think there's going to be massive advantages for companies that are taking the step to having a modern platform that can allow them to get to the data, can allow AI to get to the data. It's going to mean we're going to enter a new world where, these companies are sat on gold mines, but they just don't have the power and the energy to be able to kind of mine it as far as AI goes. And I think that's what's going to change. I think 2025 is probably a time when we'll look back and say that was a point where this, it kind of reached that inflection point where businesses probably thought, wow, okay, we really need to start doing something now because this old platform that we're on is not going to sustain us on this new revolution.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I see you nodding along. Is there something you wanted to add?
I think I just agreeing.
Yeah, I actually think it's interesting because our first chain reactions was on the importance of data and having clean data and how it can be annoying cleaning it and whatever, and it takes a back seat to all the other projects. But I think especially as AI becomes more and more prevalent and we're aware that AI tends to make up facts, especially if things are lacking, then it becomes more and more important if people want to leverage AI, they need to make sure the data feeding into it is correct and comes from as unified a source as possible. And the more you leave up to AI, the more problems you're going to get yourself into. So I just find it interesting that we started the year with data and now we're back again. Get that data in order.
And I'd say it's not just that, it's the consistency as well. So we've obviously implemented an AI system this year, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. But even just field names within the database, they have to make more sense so the AI can actually understand it. If there's any ambiguity or you're using mixed terms throughout your system, you have to look at your system and look at re-architecting that so that something like AI can read it and not get confused. So it's really amazing. You've almost got to go back across, even us as a software company have to go back across the way we structured the data and make sure that it's in a really logical way so that the AI can understand it.
Yeah.
And I think the tech stack has been ready for this for longer time. So there are three things there that needs to work hand in hand. It's the tech stack itself, the solution itself, which we have been excited about now for years. Then it's to get your data in a form that you can use, that Tim was referring to. And then it's the workforce itself to put the people that are using the solutions, that they are up to the level to be able to use those type of solutions. And that is, and this is, so for example, the solutions that we have been putting in play are putting in a way that that we know that the data we are using is ready for it, but also in such a way that we know that we can trust our users to use it and then take them to next level to go even further with our solution. So you need to take one step at a time with those three considerations.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same as anything of, humans struggle with change. And so this is a big change. And I think it's great, Haukur, to talk about not only do you need to get your work ready for AI, but you need to get AI working for the people. It has to be both ways, where I think the focus in society and in what I've read in the supply chain in general, trade articles and things, has been get your stuff ready for AI. And now I slowly see a shift over to we need to get humans, we need to get AI that interacts with humans in a good way and humans ready as well, which I find a very interesting shift, if you follow it along. Let's switch to, go ahead, Haukur.
Yeah, and this is also about the visibility, that the visibility to understand what the AI is doing for you and used in the right way, not like what is happening now. You write a short text and you let AI write a long, very thorough email to someone on the other end, and the someone on the other end takes that email and let AI take that the points that you wrote in the beginning, by the way. So that is
yeah.
Same with those type of solutions.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting comment. And we'll switch to 2026 now, because I was looking at the Association for Supply Chain Managers, and I sent it to both of you. 2026, year ahead predictions. I'm sure they used another name, but predictions they are. We're just looking at the future. We never know what's going to happen, but we all try our best. And their number one thing was AI. Like they had a top 10. We're not going to go over a top 10, but since we're on this subject, their number one thing is AI. We've talked a lot about that. So, and I know we're going to wrap back around specifically to AGR's and Clarus's platforms. So I think we'll just set it aside for now. And what I'd like to look at with a top 10 list from the ASCM is to look how that correlates with the survey that AGR sent out this year. So now we're moving ahead this year to our users, because there is quite a bit of overlap between what this larger supply chain manager organization is predicting and what our own users are saying for the year ahead. And one of the things that they're saying picks up on the same thing from 2025, which was trade policy, global dynamics. This is one of the big factors it's going to impact. And I was wondering if either of you or both of you would like to comment on anything you see coming up in 2026 that might impact.
Who wants to start? They're both too polite.
I can assign roles. I can be the teacher here and be like, you.
So if we refer to what would be on, based on what we're discussing, that some disruption or something unexpected will happen in 26, and if I would know, then it would probably not be unexpected. So that is is one thing. But with that being said, you still need to prepare for it, and you need to prepare your supply chain for those unexpected things to happen. And you need to make sure that you have analyzed that risk and make sure that you have ways to work in your supply chain, and you have prepared your supply chain to take on unexpected things that might happen in the future. And that is that you are doing with the visibility, that you're doing with AI modules that are able to enable you to take decisions on the fly with changes that are happening. But that would be, But what is happening there is just using, I would always say the same as they said in the beginning of last year, that we are truly going to use AI this year. I hope it will not be the same.
Yeah, I think I have a feeling that 2026 hopefully should be less volatile than 2025. I feel like, again, that, I always say to my staff, I know, but whenever I say to my staff, I always say the first year of a US administration and the election year is always a little bumpy. There's an 18-month period there where everything up for grabs. It could, the world could go in any direction. I think it'll settle down a little bit more. There'll be a little bit, I can't imagine another trade war. I think that's kind of calming down. If there is something that comes up, it will be completely unforeseen. It'll be something we haven't seen coming. But I think you're right. I think the last 6 years has meant that we are very resilient to change at this point. We know we kind of know how to handle it. We've had massive challenges. I mean, even in the UK, you look at COVID, it was a combination of COVID and Brexit at the same time. We really went through a lot of change that affected logistics probably more than anything. So I think I like to think we'll have a smoother year than we did this year, but there's always the unknown out there. And from a tech perspective, yes, I think this will be the year of proper AI adoption within business. As I said, 2025 was the foundation. So we actually it was this time last year, I came up with an idea within the platform. I wanted to use AI to build essentially an assistant that could act entirely like a user within Clarus. We built it out. We had a prototype in February, and I was using it, and it just wasn't there. So what was happening is it was doing all the things we've seen AI do: hallucinate, make things up. And when it's acting like a user, it can't do that. So I'll give you a great example of what I did. I asked it, I said, find all the orders for Friday and process them so that we can start picking. The AI returned and said, I couldn't find any orders for Friday. So what I did was I expanded the search results, and I processed all the orders for Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. I was like, whoa, no, that is not what I asked you to do. That's literally the opposite of what I asked you to do.
Yeah.
It's just where AI was at that point. There became an inflection point around September, October, where we had kind of ChatGPT 5, we had Claude 4.5, and a couple of the other ones come out. And at that point, the guardrails were much better. The AI followed instructions properly. You you could tell it, there's ways to ensure that the AI did things as you asked and didn't just make things up. We're still not 100% there. You still need to be really careful with these applications. But now the AI assistant that we've got can fully act like a user in the system, which is amazing to see. You can pull data out, it can action it, it can make suggestions, it can make recommendations. If it doesn't find something it's looking for, it will be open and honest with the user as well. So it was amazing that we built the technology and then AI kind of caught up to where we needed it to be. And I think that will keep progressing. We'll keep building out the technology, and the AI will keep improving as well, as to where, it will become the dream scenario that everyone kind of hopes it will be, where it will almost be like an extra employee that you've got that you can fully trust, that can be pretty much mistake-free.
Yeah, we had a similar thing in 2025 where we rolled out an AI assistant, and we actually, when we rolled it out, we said, he's our new favorite employee and your new favorite employee. So Haukur, maybe you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, for me, that is usually the first step, because users today are just expecting some generative AI to be used within their tools, and they are ready to use it. They are using it on their own as individuals in daily lives. That is, for me, that was the easy step for us, because our users were ready for it, and that is just to have our documentations to use the generative AI. And now we have more than actually close to 70% of all when the users are asking about the system is answered by this favorite employee called Finn, who is answering the bot that is answering that. Now we are taking that we took that to a next level, where we are providing Finn with more data that is based on the tenant you're working on, not only general documentation about the system. Now Finn knows what your stock level is. It knows how many orders are on the way, and if you're overstocked. And you can start to ask Finn about more advanced questions about your situation. And this is something that I think users are just expecting to be, and we have that now in our systems. And now we can take them to next level, where we are using AI for more advanced decision making. For example, when you have a new item that you are rolling out to the stores or the warehouses, and when you have a new item, you have no history of it, and it's very difficult to predict for the future if you have no history. In the past, 15 years ago, we allowed you to manually just say, yeah, I'm starting to sell this. I will just link it manually to an old item, and then you have something to protect on. But now we're using, and this is something we roll out early in the next year, where there is an AI module that just based on how the item is, what is the name of the item, in which product group, in which warehouses or store it's located in, to for that new item, what the sale will be, without having any sales history, or giving you recommendation which one to connect it to. So it gives the users, the AI is helping them, and you have the mix of AI decision making and the overview and transparency that the user wants to have, and still be in control what the AI does with the data, and you have the final saying what to do.
Yeah, so for all those listening who filled out our survey and said you don't use AI at all, if you have interacted with Finn in the system at all, then you are actually using AI to manage your inventory. But it's actually pretty awesome for me that people maybe don't realize it. It means that it's running so smooth, it feels so natural. It's doing the things that it needs to do without being in people's faces, which I think should be the goal of this sort of AI addition to platforms like Clarus and like AGR. Don't shove it in people's throats, just make it easy. Make it sound like you're chatting with your friend or a coworker or something like that, and they give you good answers. So yeah, go ahead.
For example, for you, our users, are they asking you to use external data and the algorithms? Do they want to feed your AI functionality with other data than you have in your system? And then you have the issue with how to format the data that you put into the model and things like that. So are these something that you are?
Yeah, so we've just rolled out an MCP server on the back of some of our users who are really into AI, asking for that, because again, they've wanted to get it from all of their systems, and then they can plug it directly into ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, whichever LLM they use, and then they can train on top of that, which is really cool. So all the tool calls that we have within Clarus are now in an MCP server, which can be accessed from any LLM, which has literally just been rolled out, I think, last week. We might not have even made that public yet, so I might have just broke marketing's big announcement.
Go to market strategy out the window.
Whoops. But no, that's a huge piece as well, because we'll build AI tools within our platform, and I think it's actually our responsibility as well. So you talk about users not really using AI. I think that's probably down to the software providers that they've got or not got that aren't really helping them to understand what it can do. When we've demoed the assistant, I think the amount of demos I've done where people haven't actually understood that AI can actually do things in a system for you rather than just give you a response. That's been a kind of a mind-blowing piece for some people. And then they've kind of realized how powerful it can be when they've realized it can be a two-way interaction. So the AI can go and do a load of tasks that they're doing every day and report back to them that it's done it. That's a massive change. A lot of people just see ChatGPT and say, it's formatted my email for me, it made me sound professional, it's written me a poem. And, there's a lot more it can do. And I think the tool call thing, the MCP server, all of this came in 2025. And that's why, we've adopted. I mean, when we first started work on the MCP server, I think we were using something Amazon had just built on top. We were building on top of that, and that was 11 days. It was released for 11 days. So this is really bleeding edge stuff. And it's only really come into play the second half of 2025. And that's why you'll see it be a lot more prevalent in 2026. And people will start to get it. The education will be there. They'll see it across all of their systems if they're using good systems and they've got a good software provider. And then the power users will use things like MCP to make kind of company-wide chatbot that can talk to all of the systems they use and be that one-stop kind of employee that they can ask a direct question to and hopefully get a direct answer, even though it's going to 3 or 4 systems to get that data.
So in my eternal quest to make things clear to people, can you unpack what MCP means, please?
Yeah, it stands for Model Context Protocol. And basically, it's just a standard to say, these are the tools that you have in your system. And what a tool is, again, just to simplify this, is in Clarus's world, a tool is like create an order. So we'll document to an AI how you create an order in Clarus, and that'll be, you call this API, this is the data you need, these are the optional fields, and we'll give it also a human description. It's almost like if I was describing it to you, how you would create an order in Clarus, I would almost also do that in the prompt as well for the MCP tool. What then happens is this all gets documented in the MCP, you plug it into something like ChatGPT, and then it's now aware that it can create an order in Clarus. So if the user actually specifically says, can I create an order in Clarus, the ChatGPT will say, I know exactly what to do here. Give me this information. I'll be able to go and do it for you. So it's just it's another layer on top of your API, really, that just allows AI to really understand what's happening there.
So I'm going to put a plug in because I started in AGR as a tech writer. And I created the first knowledge base for the SaaS edition. And I just think it's so important to have great tech documentations that are human focused so that when AI is drawing from that tech documentation, they create a more human focused answer. One thing that I think worked well with training Finn to answer correctly was the ability to connect it to only our technical documentation and any supporting documentation that we had. And I know a lot of people are like, well, I can use AI for tech documentation. And that is true. I'm not going to lie, right? But if you're using AI for tech documentation, then using AI, we're back to Haukur's issue of what are we actually producing for? Who are we actually producing for? And I think it's really important in order to get the human right to have humans involved in the process, right? Not just for tech documentations, that's what we're on specifically, but just in general with generative AI or AI at all, we want to make it human friendly, not that it's going to take over the world. We actually got a question from somebody who's watching us, and Tim, it's towards you, but I'm going to go ahead and open it up to both, and I'm going to show it on the stream, but I will read it aloud too. So Tim, from your perspective, how can software companies help supply chain teams actually adopt and use AI in their day-to-day work? So Tim, since they asked, you go ahead and start, and then Haukur, you can follow up on that one.
No, this is good. This is funny. It's a question we asked ourselves this time last year. And the answer really is, you're not using AI for AI's sake. We're not putting an AI tool in to tick a box, or we're not putting an AI tool in that looks fancy so that we can demo it and impress some people. What you're trying to do is you're trying to make someone's job easier, or you're trying to automate something. And you've got to really focus on that. So for a software company like us, we look at the jobs that people are doing every day, repetitively, all the time, and we're just looking at that and going, can AI solve this as a problem? And if it can, yes, let's build an automation that utilizes the AI to make that decision that user is doing. And in a warehouse, there's many very complex decisions that are made multiple times a day. And those parameters, those decisions are very, very different for every single warehouse. So, software will always get you to some point. You bolt AI on top of that decision and those list of parameters, you can put them into an AI prompt. You can really explain exactly what's going on and interpret that. And it can become a really, really bespoke and specific operation for that particular team. And I think that's the key part. Again, if the software company like us can go into a business and say, this thing you're doing 5 times a day, 10 times a day, we can replace that with AI, that becomes a way that a company will go, yes, please. If you can remove all that cost for me, then absolutely we're going to adopt it. It's what it's really not about. And I've been to many conferences this last year. And I've seen some products that have put AI into the product, and it just doesn't do anything. It makes it does something that I just go, yeah, but the system could always do that before. What AI needs to be now is this added layer of flexibility that software or bespoke software can't really achieve, and that's what we're trying to really focus on at Clarus.
Okay, what are your thoughts?
We have done the same, where we have had for a long time forecasting algorithms that are based on AI, but we figured out that for items that have a lot of sales history, you're able to actually, the old models even work better than the AI models for those. But then we have gone more into the part to use AI where it is needed, like I was referring to here earlier with new items where the old models were not working well enough. And there we want the users to use AI to predict for the future for new items that have no sales history. But how users are using the system today, it is speaking with Finn about how to use the system, and we have seen that they're using it more and more. You can always say to Finn, I want to speak with a human. And sometimes you want to have a human on the other line to speak with you. But we are seeing this on the rise. Like I said, going from 40, 50, 60, 70% of all requests go through Finn. But we are now, Finn doesn't speak to you unless you speak to him. That is how it is set up now. So actually, some of my friends are like that as well. But then it's to take the next level, that they speak to you without you speaking to him, just pointing you into the right direction. Have you looked at your product group so fast? I think they're overstocked, or I think you are too late with placing an order. That is the next step for Finn and for our dev team too.
Yeah, and I think that's the trend, isn't it? It's the orchestration part. It's where AI can actually look at your business and understand your system, exactly what you're trying to do, and pull out anomalies or pull out suggestions to say, you could do this, or you could do that, or this looks like it might not be correct, and just being able to raise those exceptions. That's an amazing use case for AI.
But maybe let's not shame them. Maybe not say you're too late. But Tim,
you have to ask him, am I late? And he will say yes, but
yes, you are. I think it's interesting what you said about how AI allows otherwise uniform sort of systems to become a little bit more bespoke. And that really resonated with me, because I know one thing and we were talking about change management and humans and how the humans are what drives everything earlier. One thing when we're talking to clients or potential clients, they're like, well, I just have a gut feeling about how it should be. Or, we use spreadsheets, which aren't very good, but I have this feeling about how it should be. And if we could get those feelings into AI, right? Because I agree with you. You can tell AI to do anything, it's not helpful necessarily. Then maybe it would help people feel more confident. I know we talk about comfortable, but I don't think that's it. I think it's you want to be confident when you are using this tool that it's not going to mess up your own feelings after 25 years of experience, which should not be discarded. They should not be set aside. They should be somehow incorporated into it. And I think that that's the first time I've ever heard somebody talking about how maybe we can use AI to incorporate all that rich human experience into a technology tool so we have more confidence when we're using it. No, I'm utterly fascinated by that idea.
You sound like my wife. She says to me that feelings are not wrong. So that probably applies to the supply chain as well.
Feelings are not wrong, nor should they be overlooked.
And they should not be overlooked. And we sometimes see that by prospects, that they are scared that AI will, or our system will just take over all decisions in the supply chain. It needs to be a mix of both feelings that they have with their experience running the supply chain, but use good systems overall to help them with taking those decisions.
Yeah.
So we actually touched on a lot of the other 2026 predictions, and we have a couple of good questions in chat that I want to get to, but let's get a little bit further along. One of it was automation. I think we talked a lot about how AI can help with that automation issue. One of it is cost optimization, and we definitely talked about that, about how, and Tim, again, I really liked your take on it. Like, we have so much experience now in this area, supply chain, logistics, all of that, procurement, whatever you want to call it. We're dealing with uncertainty, that the next uncertainty that come our way should not trigger anxiety, but we should be able to fall back on those skills, processes, and procedures that we already have in place. So I think that's like really important to bring out, again, because we often say this in the negative, but I think that's a really positive thing. And I think that also goes with the costs, or the agile sourcing that Haukur, you mentioned, that was another number one, or that was number 9 on their list of the top 10. But I do want to touch on, since we are in the tech space with both Clarus and AGR, I do want to touch on the issue of cybersecurity, which, Tim, is something you brought up has been quite important as we were preparing for this live stream. So what do we think about cybersecurity for 2026 as it touches, the supply chain, our lives, our work lives, and those areas?
Yeah. So again, looking back on 2025, especially in the UK, we had some very, very high profile cyber attacks. So there was Marks and Spencers and Jaguar Land Rover were probably the two most famous ones. I think M&S was about 350 million. I think it wiped all of their profits for maybe one quarter. It might have been even a year. So it was horrendous impact. And really, this has been an ongoing thing in the UK for a while. It's just hit much more mainstream now. So I think it was last year, the second most targeted industry behind defense was actually logistics. And the reason for that is there's just so much legacy software out there. They're just easy targets. And that's what these businesses are looking for. There was, I think, the oldest logistics company in the UK, unfortunately, went into administration in 2023 because they were the victim of a cyber attack. They even made a documentary about it that was aired this year on the BBC. And I think, again, it's just a nail in the coffin for that kind of legacy software, even a hosted system in a data center that's not hosted by you. I think that's a massive risk because, what we've seen is when that data center has been breached, they'll usually go in the size of customer first as to who they're putting back live. And you might be the 50th customer that gets live. That might take 6 weeks to get you back online. If that's a logistics platform, a mission critical logistics platform, you've got no chance. You've got no chance there. And that's why we've seen, unfortunately, the ramifications of some of these attacks have actually been other companies going bankrupt and into administration. So yeah, I think it's another nail in the coffin for legacy software. And I think it's another catalyst for why people need to be looking at more modern cloud native applications that take security seriously and around that one thing. No one's invincible to cyber attacks. They're just not. But a lot of people are looking for the easy targets. And if you're a legacy system running old software, you are an easy target. It is literally just a matter of time until someone finds that vulnerability.
What about you?
Yeah, this is coming much more into, we see our customers are focusing more and more on this, and especially those companies that are on old legacy platforms. We have been pushing our customer base over from our on-prem platform to the SaaS platform. And actually, we have one example of a customer where they had a cyber attack on all their servers, wiped out all their old legacy systems, and actually took our system then to the cloud following that. But there are not all systems that you can put into play with the speed that we can. So they were struggling with ERP and other things that to get them up and running after wiping out all their systems that they have on-prem in their facility. But I see there is more focus on this than ever before.
Yeah, I mean, just anecdotally, I definitely see an uptick in potential clients' leads coming and asking for more and more detailed cybersecurity information, both how we deal with cybersecurity from the upfront, but also if there is an incident, how do we plan to deal with it as well? So I think that is one of the big issues. It may be one of those unexpected things that happen in 2026, and we're going to have to really, really work with it. We're winding down. There are 3 great questions that I want to get to. So I'm just going to pop them up as before, and then I'll read them. And one of us, how should supply chain teams evaluate new technology without getting distracted by buzzwords? Haukur, you want to start with that one?
Ask the provider what the buzzword he's using, what it means. Actually, you were asking Tim about what something meant here earlier. So he gave you a great answer, showed that Tim know what he was discussing. And then ask them just directly, you're talking about AI. What do you mean by that in your solution? And just ask. Don't get shy about not understanding all the buzzwords that are put in front of you. So.
Yeah, I'd say it's all about the demo, really. If you have a use case in your business that you're hoping the software will fix, make sure they show you how that works. In Clarus, people are always surprised when we do our demos because we show everything, and they always kind of say, well, the other providers talked about it, but they didn't actually show the flow or the process. We always try and really show what the users are going to be doing. And I think, the buzzword isn't important, but things like AI, it's important to ask about what their strategy is as well, because they've got to have one. You don't want them to just say, it's not important at the moment. They need to have a long-term strategy for it as well. If they have some AI, they can show it to you. And, does it work for you? Yeah, okay, brilliant. It's not just a tick box exercise. You can't just say, we want AI. Yes, show me the AI. What does it do? What are going to be the benefits of that AI? And I want to see a full demo. I think that's the key part. I always think the demo is the time when that's what you're buying. So you want to see as much as possible as to what your workflow is going to look like.
Yeah, showing is believing.
That segues nicely into another question this time from Andy. Says, why do you both think lots of logistic companies are afraid of AI, and how can we change that? I don't know if we can change, but we can at least nudge it in a certain direction.
Yeah, I think for me, it's probably what I'm seeing is it's the governance. It's again, the larger companies. They're just very wary of opening the data up. They're very wary of the damage it could cause. And that's rightfully so as well. As I said, if we launched our AI assistant back in January last year, it could have possibly been a bit of a mess. We wouldn't have done it because we realized this internally. But AI in general, if you just plug all this into your platform when it's not ready, it could cause you some problems, especially on the larger side. Guys, companies, they do need to do the due diligence. They need to make sure that they're working with a partner that knows what they're talking about. They understand a hawk has just flown into my window.
Oh no!
Unexpected thing to happen. So.
Yeah.
My name is Hawk, by the way. But that's...
Yeah, his name does mean Hawk.
That's so strange. I hope he's all right. Yeah, he just.
I hope he's all right too.
Yeah. So it is about governance and regulation, and it's the same. Bigger companies are always a little bit slower to move with these things, and I think the market will just prove itself over time, and there'll be more confidence out there, so that the companies will adopt to it more.
One is about the data. Just we are getting questions: is your data, is it on a service in Europe? Is it on a service in the US, and so forth? But I think, if I understand the question right, I think it's also just people are afraid that the AI will just take over the supply chain. It is a mix of both, and I'm referring to what you were discussing here earlier. It's a mix of feelings and mix of knowledge of running the supply chain, and then the AI model to support that and give you confidence, like you phrased it, Randi, earlier.
Yeah. I think that's interesting what you're saying, because it does also tie back into the cybersecurity, right? It's like, if I open all my data to AI, am I also opening my data to a security attack that we're not aware of yet because it hasn't been done that often, But I think those two may tie in people's thoughts as well. Okay, the last couple of questions are about change, so let's try to get through them. What advice would you give supply chain leaders who feel overwhelmed by the constant change?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, because I don't think it's, well, I said it is going away maybe a little bit in 2026, but it's not overall going away. I think you have to kind of look at change as a positive, and I think that's about adopting new technology. It's about making sure that you're ready for anything. COVID really caught a lot of companies out. I had a lot of people on the phone to me kind of saying, we need to change our retail business into an e-com business overnight, and our platform can't do anything near close to what it needs to do. So you do have to look at, a warehouse management system or an inventory planning system. You have to look at not just the capabilities that you need, but what else can it offer you, just in case things do happen. But yeah, I think don't be overwhelmed by it. Try and almost enjoy the change. And, that's what's going to set you apart from other businesses as well. If you're overwhelmed by it, you're scared by change, then you're missing a big opportunity. I think it's the same in anything in life. I think change should be good if you are willing to kind of move with it.
It might not help everyone. It's just get used to it, and changes are good. I think that was exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, I always tell people, like, have your panic attack, take a deep breath, and then move on. Like, don't deny that this can cause upsets, but just deal with it and move on, because the change will happen whether or not you move on. Okay, last question. We got 2 minutes, so I just want to get this one in from Clara, who says, what planning decisions will be hardest to get right next year? And again, we're asking you to predict the future, but if there's something that you see as far as planning, supply chain planning, demand planning, see that will be hard.
I think the hardest part is to compromise between the higher cost and lesser risk. I think it's a compromise that you, for example, that is what I was referring to here in the beginning. It's all about cost. So I know that you should have dual way of getting your product but you can't do that for every product, because it's between the risk. There are some items or item groups where you just have to take the risk, while there are others that you don't have that luxury and you have to bite the bullet and take the cost on. So it's to decide it's the balance between risk and cost, which will be the hardest one to take, because it's constant. You're expecting the unknown to come, and then.
Nice.
Yeah.
Tim, what about you?
Yeah, exactly the same. It's kind of planning for many different scenarios, and it's your typical risk register stuff, isn't it? It's kind of like, what's the risk? How likely is it? And then, what do we act on now? And what do we just have a plan B for it if that happens as well?
But Tim told me that 26 was going to be better, so I'm okay.
Well, we've recorded you and we're going to hold you to that. All right, we're right at time. And as a moderator, I try to keep to time. But I really want to thank you both for joining me today. It's been just a great conversation. And we have recorded this. With the tech mix up and everything, we'll figure out a way to get it out to as many people as possible. Thanks for everybody who joined us online, and especially those who braved the chats and questions. We really, really appreciate those. Clarus and AGR are partners now, so this is the start of a long cooperation that will, I think, push both companies to just do better, and also give our clients, each company's clients, more opportunities and more solutions than they would have if we were each working individually. So thank you for everyone. The next chain reactions will be probably in February in the coming year. We haven't decided on a topic yet, but we hope that you will join us there. Have a lovely day and have very happy holidays. Bye.
Bye. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.